FYI.
Pick
Client
something
confidentiality
cool.
is big for me, so I want to make sure that everybody knows that they can do that.
Okay.
So my name is Naomi Rodda. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have a master's in social work, and I am the director of home and community-based services at the Motion Picture and Television Fund. I know most people know of the fund as the beautiful campus on the border of Woodland Hills and Calabasas, but FYI, we have a community services department that's actually right down the street on Olive across from the Warner Brothers Tower. And that's where I work, and that's where my staff and some of our colleagues work. And our role is to basically provide services to people not living on the campus, so people living in the community of all ages, working age, retirees, kind of all across the age spectrum. So the topic of our conversation tonight is coping during COVID. What's in your toolbox? It's about stress management. It's about, sort of rediscovering yourself during this time. It's about mental health. So it's kind of a mishmash of many different things. I also am going to talk about some of the programs that MPTF is doing that are COVID specific, as well as some of the programs that we have always had, always will have, and are here to serve you, the industry. So let's give like maybe one more minute, and then I'll go ahead and start. Yeah.
Maybe I should change my name to something cool.
You guys are the creative ones. I'm not very creative, so.
I don't know. You'd be surprised.
I have a hard time.
On my, I don't know.
I make my sons call me beautiful, sparkly princess mommy, but that's a little much for the.
She'll talk about
the group.
I'm sure they'll be great.
Okay, let's go ahead and start. You can put up the first slide.
If you guys, one thing real quick, can you guys turn off your mics, please? Like mute yourself while during the talk.
Okay, cool. So again, the topic of our conversation is coping during COVID. What's in your toolbox? And let's go with the first slide. So when we talk about coping in general, most people have heard the term coping skills. So these are different ways in which we cope. And most people fall into basically two main buckets of how they cope. We have solution-focused coping, and we have emotion-focused coping. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each. There's no one way is better, the other way is better. These are just what science and research have told us about the ways in which people cope. So solution-focused coping is more of a problem-solving type of approach. It's very much information gathering. It's viewed as kind of a more practical way of coping. It's, in some cases, people think that it's more effective. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I mean, my personal bias is that a blended style really works best. And there are some times when a stressful situation calls for a solution-focused coping, and then there are some times when it calls for emotion-focused coping. There's no right or wrong. So solution-focused coping works best when people perceive that they have some control over the stress in their lives. Now, I'd be pretty hard-pressed to find someone that feels that they have control over their lives since the middle of March. I would love to find out who those people are, and I would love for them to educate me on what they're doing and how they come to that conclusion. But anyway, so emotion-focused coping is really what it says. It's a technique where people vent. It's a way for people to let things out. People use distraction. People use humor. There's a lot of ways that emotion-focused coping can actually be, and it's actually very healthy for us. Even though science tells us it's sometimes more passive and less effective, it's really actually a very important style to employ. For example, we all know people in our lives that it's very hard for them to express their emotions. It's very hard for them to let it out. And what do we see with people like that? They usually bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up until they explode. Or they bottle it up and bottle it up and they start to have stomach problems and headaches and back pain and high blood pressure. So there's actually a correlation between physical health and the amount of stress a person is carrying and how they adapt and deal with that stress. So there's expressing emotion, finding a safe person, whoever that is in your life that can tolerate whatever that emotion is for you, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whatever it is. That's actually an extremely healthy impulse. And find someone that you can practice on if you're not used to doing it, but I highly recommend it. We all have times where it's just too much. And even the most self-reliant, self-sufficient, independent person needs at least one person in their life that can be that true sounding board and that can tolerate whatever emotion comes through. We all need that one person. No man is an island, as the song says. So, all right. I really like to have these presentations be a dialogue. So questions, comments, anything that kind of comes up as you're listening to what I'm saying is great with me. It gets kind of boring for me to just listen to me yammer on and on. So if anything comes up for you as you're thinking about what we're talking about, please feel free to raise your hand or write something in the chat, because I really want us to have more of a conversation if we can. All right, next slide. Hi, doggy. Okay, normalizing anxiety. So I think in this day and age, even though a lot of you guys are fortunate enough to be working, there's still a lot of anxiety that's sort of percolating around in our society. I mean, emotions are running high. Things are very charged right now. Our political climate, the social justice issues that are going on. Anyone who has a child that goes to LAUSD, we got the great news yesterday that, online learning is going to continue. So, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with what's been happening over the last 4 months. Anxiety looks very different for different people. I like to use a lot of myself in this presentation because I feel like that helps people understand that there should be no judgment and no stigma around how things look for you. I really like to destigmatize things and to break down myths and taboos. So I use a lot of myself in what we're going to talk about today. So this is what anxiety looks like for me. This woman who's got all these thoughts that are spinning and questions and everything is just kind of like that. Like her head's kind of like ready to explode. So when I get anxious, that is what happens to me. I start ruminating and I start overthinking things. And when I'm supposed to be winding down at night and lying in bed, that's the worst. Either that or in the shower. These are times that should be sort of calming and relaxing. And what happens for me when I'm in a state of anxiety is I go the opposite way. I start ruminating and thinking and perseverating on, what did I forget? What do I have to do tomorrow? Is this person mad at me? Why are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Is it me? Is it them? All of those things, and they're all happening at the same time. Anxiety is one of those insidious things that can really snowball very quickly. So what I'm basically getting at here is everyone probably has some sort of anxiety happening right now in some form. And I just encourage you all not to judge that feeling when it happens to you. Our bodies are meant to sort of have peaks and then valleys. So if you feel yourself getting anxious, eventually it will pass. And there's nothing wrong with letting that anxiety sort of come up and then sort of cascade over you. Trying to sort of block it or push it aside or pretend that it's not there, usually doesn't work. You can maybe, if you're great at meditating, you might be able to kind of get it out of there for a while, but it's probably going to resurface. So I think what I try to do is try to become more rational in my anxiety and really try to understand what am I anxious about? Why am I anxious about this? Is it rational for me to be anxious about this right now? Is this in my control? If it is, okay, what can I do to mitigate it and reduce it? If it's not, then why am I expending so much energy around something that I don't have control over? Let me redirect my energy to something that I have control over. And I find that that really helps. That helps me. So, yes, Jeanette.
Amy,
Yes.
one thing that, you know, on top of the normal anxieties, luckily we're working and it's not like, you know, we have income coming in, and there have been pressures about defining like what is work time and what is not work time, you know, so it's hard to make those, you have to set those boundaries for yourself so that
Yes.
you're not working all the time.
Yes.
But for me in particular, the thing that's been coming up, and maybe this sounds too heavy, but sometimes I feel like this kind of existential kind of thing, like we're drawing cartoons and the world is falling apart, you know, like and maybe that's an out of control feeling, but occasionally that little worm like comes in, you know. I don't know, what do you do about that? Like,
So,
let the feeling pass? I don't know.
Well, so what I would say to that is I would there's your question, your comment has two parts, both of which are equally important to address. You know, everybody thinks working from home is so amazing, right? Everybody, you know, when we're working in an office, everybody's like, oh God, if only I work from home. Well, now that we've been working from home for 4 months, we see that it's actually not at all it's cracked up to be. And it actually is really, really important to set limits and boundaries. It's essential. You know, if, for example, we were talking before the presentation started. So the desk where I'm standing is like, here's our kitchen table. It's just out of frame here. And here's my son on the computer back here. So, you know, there's no office where I open the door, I close the door, I leave the suite, I get in my car, so we really actually have to separate what is our work schedule and what is not. And I find that actually being working from home right now, I'm working probably 2 to 4 hours more a day than I normally would. You know, instead of an 8-hour day, I'm working a 10-hour day, sometimes 12. So what I have done for myself, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And, you know, part of that is also who we are as individuals and, you know, how strong are we with our boundaries? How good are we at being able to say, you know what, this is still going to be here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You know, this is maybe not on a deadline. You know, what will happen if I leave this for now? I actually set an alarm on my phone. You know, a little alarm, like you said, to wake up in the morning. I set it for 4:30. So my day starts at 8 usually, and it ends at 4:30. So when that alarm goes off at 4:30, I know that I've worked my time. And it's a physical, like, audio reminder. Hey, you've put in a good effort today. And then I have to choose, all right, I've worked my 8.5 hours. You know, what can am I going to be okay with ending this here and picking it up tomorrow? And some days I'm very successful at it and some days I'm not. And the other thing that I tell myself is I can't beat myself up for, you know, working longer hours. That's not helpful either. So I think it's all about figuring out what little limits can you set and boundaries can you set that will work for you to really make the work time and the home time and balance time distinct. If your office is in your bedroom, I would move it if you can. Don't have your workspace in your bedroom. That's not ideal. Find a separate space. If it's the kitchen table, if it's the, if it's another office, if you're lucky to have it, try not to make it in your bedroom, because then it's just too tempting. It's just too tempting not to separate. So the other thing I would say about your more existential question, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about that later on, about finding purpose and sort of self-discovery during this time. But what I would say to you is the world needs joy right now. The world needs silliness. The world needs humor. And from an entertainment perspective, if you want to get right down to it, the world needs arts and entertainment right now in a way that maybe we never have before. And you guys are one of the few places that are producing new content, like if I'm being like purely practical and objective here. So I understand the feelings that you're having about, well, what am I doing? Like in the grander scheme of things, you're bringing joy to people that are in isolation and are at home. And that's actually extremely valuable.
Thank you.
What I would say about the other things is, I know it's hard, especially when you're at home, if you have the TV on in the background. We don't need to be inundated as individuals with this constant barrage of gloom and doom. We all know that there's a pandemic. We all know that people are going to fall ill. We all know that we who live in a society have a greater responsibility to the vulnerable to do what's right and to follow the guidelines. Do we need to hear that like 8-10 hours a day? No, there's time for that. So, there's things that we can control and there's things that we cannot. So I think keeping ourselves focused on the things within our control and understanding that even though what you think you're doing is silly, is actually incredibly valuable for people right now. That's how I would reframe what you're experiencing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Moving on. Next slide. Okay. Juggling multiple roles. How fun is this, you guys? How fun is it to try to be working and also have to be a teacher when your kids are in 2nd grade and 3rd grade and the math is all different and the science is all different and the way they write is all different, and you're trying to work and every 10 minutes it's mommy, daddy, I don't understand this, will you help me with this? Mommy, my brother's hitting me. Daddy, can we go outside? How fun is that, you guys? It's hard. It's hard to concentrate, when that's going on. It's hard. I mean, I cannot tell you how thankful I am that my children are a little older and I did not have to, when school closed in March, April, I didn't have to try to navigate math and science. I couldn't have done it. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to say. So, before this happened, our lives were busy and we were struggling with work-life balance and, especially for you guys, working, you guys work crazy hours. You work 12 hours, 14 hours, on a regular basis. And then carving out that family time, it's a hard enough balance to strike. But now when you're kind of all cooped up, in a confined space, and you're trying to work and your kids have needs and your spouse has needs, your partner has needs, your pet has needs. I mean, I think our pets are probably the most either psyched or unhappy. Like if your pet was like a once a day walk pet and now your pet has to go out like 5 times because there's, 5 family members that want to get outside and walk your pet's probably like, go back to work already, people. Outside the home, like give me my space. But, when we're all sort of confined in a little space and don't have what we need to be able to separate and concentrate, it's hard. I mean, I started to have to wear, I think about 2 weeks ago, my husband bought me these massive, like, noise canceling headphones that you use when you're working with power tools. And that's how I have to work because I cannot focus and concentrate when, you know, people are running around in the house and I've got, you know, zombies being killed over here with the video games, and, you know, my husband's banging and clanging in the kitchen. You know, it's a lot of distractions. So just sort of figuring out how can we do that, all of that, and meet everybody's needs, including our own, you know? I mean, there's something nice about when you're at work, you know, you take that little break, you go and you get that cup of coffee, or you sit in the break room with your colleagues or the production office or wherever you're at, you know, and you talk to them about things that you're working on, you ask for their guidance. You know, there's that camaraderie, there's that collegiality that we don't really have now. And I'm going to talk about staying emotionally connected later on, but you know, there's a lot going on in terms of the many, many roles that we're having to juggle in a very, very different way. You know, and the things that we as social workers, you know, are watching out for within the people that we talk to, you know, are people starting to maybe drink more than they did before because they need that to calm down? You know, are people having more marital spats because they're not used to all this togetherness? And, you know, how is that all working? So, you know, there are mental health issues that come along with this confinement, this isolation. You know, thank God we can go out a little bit now, but the first couple of months when you really couldn't really go out except to do essential errands, you know, you get that cabin fever that's really, really hard to manage. So, you know, what I would say about juggling these multiple roles, again, we're only human. There's only so many hours in the day. And we have to be patient with ourselves and with the people in our lives. It's hard. Yes, Jeanette, you're muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm directing right now, and I have a team of about 6 people that I'm managing. Mm-hmm. And some people on my team, they live alone and are completely isolated. And so I've been trying to accommodate them, like if they need a break, if they need just to even just chat, like some people are just leaving their cameras on so that it feels like you're in the same room. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like
I think that's great. You know, and that's what has been sort of the things that we've been trying to do as a social work team. You know, we have lots of our staff that do live by themselves. So all they're doing, you know, hour after hour, day after day, is talking to people in distress. They may talk to 10, 15 people in the course of a day that are in distress over, you know, whether it's financial stress, mental health issues. Some people are very sick, you know, and extremely worried about their, you know, even venturing outside to get the mail because of their immune status. So, you know, hearing those calls hour after hour, day after day, when you're by yourself and you really don't have anyone to connect with, it starts to really wear on your soul. So I think the strategies that you've tried to employ are amazing, Jeanette. I mean, we've done things like it's kind of silly, but so what, you know, we had a Zoom lunch where everybody wore their favorite hat, you know, and we all talked about why this hat was our favorite hat and where we got the hat. And, you know, it was just a chance for us to connect as a team because, you know, in the past when we were in our office, we'd all eat lunch together, or we'd have little potlucks, you know, or we'd have fun events around someone's birthday. And, you know, we're going on 4.5, 5 months now where we haven't really had that camaraderie. So I think social isolation is a serious mental health issue, actually. And studies have shown us that being socially isolated, you know, is equivalent to smoking like 14 cigarettes a day. So it is actually, it's actually correlated with poor physical health. So it's really, really important if you live alone and are working kind of alone in a silo in silence. It's very, very important that you reach out and connect with someone and that you hear somebody else's voice and that you actually carry on a two-way conversation during the day, every day. Even if it's about something mundane. It doesn't have to be, you know, the meaning of life. But it's really, really important not to remain completely socially isolated. Okay, ready for the next slide. Self-care. So this is one of my favorite slides because it's all about me. No, this is my self-care vision board. And again, I know I try to use a lot of myself in this talk. So doing something for yourself, purely selfish, every day is super important. And everybody has that thing, you know. Jeanette's got her little fur friend. We foster golden retrievers, so that's, you know, that's my fur friend. You know, the yoga on the top, exercise, some form of exercise. We're not talking about like, you know, running 5 miles a day or doing a 20-mile bike ride, even some gentle stretching. You guys sit a lot, you know, you've got to make sure that we're not like becoming the hunchback, you know, simple stretches, making sure, you know, your posture is good and aligned, that if you're sitting at a desk, that you get up every hour and that you do some simple stretching, make sure that you're not getting like carpal tunnel or having, you know, neck and shoulder issues. So a little exercise is great. We have an upright piano. My children play the piano, and when this all started, I picked it up again for myself and, you know, try to do that a little bit, you know, every couple of days. The coffee cup, my husband makes me a delicious, you know, latte every morning. So these are all, they're not huge things, you know, they're not life-changing in any way. You know, we're not talking about makeovers and, you know, really changing our lives, but these little tiny micro self-care things can really go a long way in terms of sustaining us and, you know, nourishing our spirit and our minds. You know, this is not, you know, a sprint here. This is a marathon that we're talking about until we get numbers under control, you know, until we have better treatments and eventually a vaccine. We're going to be in this peaks and valleys thing for a while. And I think we all need to be prepared for that realization. And I think people in the industry in general don't engage in enough self-care just because of the work schedules that they keep. It's really hard to do that. So find something that's just for you and do it, even if it's 5 minutes. I try to go up on the roof of our condo once a day, 15 minutes, get my vitamin D. 15 minutes, not a lot of time, but it really helps me recenter. So find that thing, whatever that is, and make sure you do it. And keep yourself accountable. Don't say, I'll do it later in the day, or there's always tomorrow. Really make an effort. Put it in your Outlook schedule or whatever you use. 15 minutes, you know, vitamin D. 15, you know, 20 minutes. Take doggy for a walk down a path I like. You know what I mean? I mean, something like that. Did you have another comment, Jeanette?
I was just going to suggest, like, maybe in the chat, people could put things that has worked for them. You know, like she could share it with everyone. Maybe, you know, if you feel like it. It's nice to hear how other people cope with that kind of thing. For me, yeah, sometimes I take a quick like nap in the day. Mm-hmm. Biking and jump rope. Damn, jumping rope is a workout.
That's great. Yeah, little power naps. I mean, I'm terrible at power nap. You know, I go down for power nap and I'm not good when I wake up. But for some people, that little 20-minute, 40 winks, whatever you call it, it's so refreshing, and it really helps you kind of regenerate your creative sense. So I bought a bike and I discovered this is great. Yes. So all of these things are exercise, getting outside, all of these things are really, really great, for sure. I just want everybody to, you know, and don't think of this as selfish, because when we take care of ourselves and we nourish ourselves, that really allows us to take care of others, you know? So it's, even though I'm saying do something selfish or it's just for you, by doing it, you actually are making yourself more open and more available to others. Because we have to recharge our own batteries in order to really be good and kind to the people in our lives.
I think Juan's idea about having like a rigid schedule really plays into that, because then it gives you permission to do those little things, you know? Like, swimming. I haven't gone swimming in a while.
I'm really glad to see that people are really still able to find ways to be active. You know, you guys have such a sedentary way of working that being able to be active in some way, whatever that is going to be really important for your future, you know, health as you get older. Music.
Learning guitar. Yeah, that's kind of going along with the piano thing.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, it's a muscle memory. You know, once you start, it's actually not that difficult it's like riding a bike, they say. So this is great.
That's awesome.
All right, you ready for the next slide? So this is kind of gets at the existential thing that Jeanette was talking about, and finding purpose. So this pandemic has forced people in some ways to do some thinking that normally we wouldn't see them doing until they're ready to retire. You know, when we're at work and in work mode and of working age, you know, we spend the years from when we're, you know, early to mid 20s to mid 60s, late 60s now for most people in the world of work. You know, our focus is work, our focus is, you know, earning income, supporting our families, you know, finding that financial stability. And what we find actually as social workers is people work, especially in the industry. If you've been in the industry, you know, a long time, we've seen people with 30, 40 years of work history in the industry. And all they know and all they've done, you know, for their life is work in the industry, which is wonderful, amazing. But what we also find is that their work identity and their personal identity are completely fused like this. And they have a difficult time separating work identity from personal identity until they retire. And they don't have the structure of work, the structure of I'm working on this project for 3 months or 4 months with these people, or I'm working on a series and then I go to the next project and the next project. But their work colleagues, their work life is their purpose. And it doesn't always leave time for a lot of other things. Just because of the nature of the business, the nature of your schedules, the nature of having to work project to project, you know, and sort of come up with that next project, it doesn't really leave a lot of time for existential crises or really reflecting on things because you're just so focused on what's in front of you. So this pandemic has really knocked people. You know, I mean, you guys are among the fortunate few, along with myself, you know, who are working. So we have a little less time to think about these bigger issues than maybe people that haven't been working in the last 3 to 4 months, but it still comes up because it's a whole new world. And what we've thought of as stability and what we thought we knew about life has really been knocked on its side with this whole pandemic. And, you know, it's hard. So the idea of finding purpose is really, I try to reframe things that are seen as like a negative or, you know, a bummer or whatever you want to call it, and to try to put a different spin on it so that we can find the positive in it. So I look at this time as a gift. You know, we don't ever really have time like this to think about these larger issues. We're just so focused on, okay, Monday to Friday, I work. Sometimes for you guys, Monday to Saturday. You know, I work. Saturday and Sunday, those are my days to do laundry, run errands. Maybe I could squeeze in a little beach time if I live in California, but we don't really give ourselves the time and space to think about these larger issues. So this time, I think, has been really helpful for people and really illustrative of what might my third act look like. You know, what do I want to be when I'm done working? What I want my life to look like. And it is a very deep question, and you know, there's really no right answer, but it's just caused people to think about things in a very different way. And I think also when you're looking at situations that are life and death for some people, you know, this pandemic is life and death for a lot of people that are immunocompromised or, you know, older, vulnerable. It really causes us to think about things in a different way. So I have a message from Juan Gill, which I wanted to read to everybody because it's cool. I too am seeing this time as a gift. I promised myself that I would not waste away this period of time and that it wouldn't be in vain. That's, you know, that's amazing. Yes. We have to take the time that we're given and make the most of it, and even if we don't know what that could mean, you know, but taking the time and giving yourself the time and the permission to wonder, to be curious about things, to think about life beyond tomorrow or next week or next month, that is a gift. And I'm hoping that people will can see that this time as that. All right, next slide. Playing to your strengths and using your talents. So you guys are successful in the Animation Guild, one of the coolest guilds around. You guys can draw. You guys can you know, create from nothing. That's a really special gift. To be able to execute what people are talking about, to see it and then to make it come to life on the page. That's an amazing talent. That's an amazing skill. And I think sometimes when we're in it, like this, and we have sort of a more tunnel vision, we don't get a chance to take a look at things more broadly. Yeah, you can draw, but it's not just drawing. It's creating from nothing. It's seeing someone's vision of what something is. They can't draw it themselves. That's why they have you. They can't generate it on the computer themselves. They kind of have an idea what they want it to look like, but they can't see it the way that you can. That's an incredible gift. I couldn't do that. So when you say, well, I'm just drawing cartoons, how is that really anything? You're not just drawing cartoons. You're bringing someone's vision to life. That's one of your talents, and only one. You know, in order to be in this business, you have to have not just your inherent talent, but you have to have a lot of business acumen. You know, things are not just handed to you. You have to go out and, you know, network and get in with the crew. And if you're in a supervisor's position, you have to know how to recruit good people. You have to know what you want. You have to lead. You know, if you're a creative person and maybe you see things a little bit differently than what you've been told, you have to give feedback. You know, you have to give feedback to people and give constructive feedback. Well, I understand that you see it this way, but you know, it'll look really cool if we do it this way. Oh, I think I'm a bit too cynical for this. Oh. Well, I try not to be Pollyanna, but I honestly believe that that you guys have to have strengths and transferable skills. You know, you have to be able to lead. You have to be able to execute vision. You have to be able to give constructive feedback. These are all important things that are very difficult to do in the real world. You know, it's not easy to lead. A bunch of it, and especially I'm sure you guys seem like you're a pretty strong bunch in terms of how you feel about things. It's not easy to lead people like that. It's also not easy to give constructive feedback to someone that's your supervisor, but if you're passionate enough about something, you'll do it. So these are all things that I think sometimes we forget we have as strengths. And I'm just wanting to remind you guys that you're not just people that draw cartoons on a piece of paper or click a bunch of dots on a computer and, you know, make Woody or Buzz. You know, there's more to you than that. And I encourage you all to think of yourselves more broadly and more holistically. So, next slide. Okay, staying emotionally connected. So, I have a real issue with the term social distancing. And every time I hear someone say it on the TV, I cringe. Because what we're doing or what we're being asked to do is not to be socially distant, but to be physically distant. Physically distant, 6 feet from one another. We are not to be socially distant. Actually, it's the opposite. We are to be more socially connected. If there's this is the time to do that. You know, there's a question and I want to get to it. So I don't want to, Janice Rim, I want to get to your comment, but I want to just finish kind of what I'm talking about with social distancing. Now is the time to pick up this antiquated thing that we have called a telephone and to dial its numbers and to call a person on the phone or FaceTime them. You know, we've all gotten so comfortable with texting and emailing, and all of that is great. Don't get me wrong, efficiency is wonderful. I'm all for it. But just like we were talking about the negative impact of social isolation and how it correlates to physical health problems, and especially, Jeanette, as you mentioned earlier, that you have quite a few people that are actually working in complete isolation. Now is the time to be emotionally and socially connected, not distant. So, physically distant, spatially distant, as someone commented, not socially distant. So I encourage you all, I mean, obviously this is a topic that you all feel is important or you wouldn't be giving up your evening after you've been working to listen to me talk. So I encourage you all to figure out what that means. Does it mean having a virtual coffee date with someone that, you know, maybe you've worked with in the past, you really admire their work style, you know, you want to pick their brain about something? Does it mean sharing your work with someone that you really trust or that you really admire and say, hey, you know, I'm working on this project, but like this is my own stuff, and what do you think about it? You know, and what kind of feedback can you give me? Now's the time to reach out to maybe an old mentor. Reconnect with that person. Find out how that person's doing. This is the time for that. It's all about strengthening relationships, not distancing ourselves from our existing relationships. So that's just my reframe of social distancing. So there's a question here, a comment here. What if you understand all of these great tips in your head, but just can't get yourself to do things or think positively? It's hard. It's hard. And it takes practice. You know, these things don't come naturally. I mean, maybe the most positive, extroverted person in the world, you know, that person that was the high school cheerleader, and maybe that works for that person. I was so not the high school cheerleader, so I can tell you, I was like the introverted, like drama geek. So it is difficult to, and especially if you're one of those people that's very much in your head and very critical of yourself. I think sometimes we're very good at being our own worst enemies. I am super critical of everything that I write, which is why it takes me forever to write things. Because I pour over every single word to make sure this is the right word I want to use, this is the right message I want to convey. Most of my colleagues would have finished that note probably in half the time. But I obsess a little bit over the quality of my notes. So yes, it is very hard to translate the ideas into action. And what I tell people is practice. Don't try to overhaul everything that I've talked about today, tomorrow. Like, don't go and like call everybody you know, be like, hey, I'm just checking in. and try to like do yoga, you know, and contemplate the universe. I'm not talking about, you know, overhauling our entire existence. Start small. Take one thing that you really, take one thing away from this that you think will really help you navigate this time. Reach out to one person who maybe you've been meaning to call and it just keeps getting put on the back burner. Friend, family, whatever, one person. Do 5 minutes of stretching when you wake up. There are some great YouTube videos that are free. 5-10 minutes of gentle stretching. Pick a spot on your body that's your tightest. You know, for me, my hamstrings are my absolute nemesis, and this little spot right here, my little mouse part of my right shoulder. Pick one part of your body and just do some stretches. You have to practice these things, and actually they say that it takes 2 weeks or more for something to become a habit. So if you want to implement some sort of better, more active lifestyle, it's going to take you 2 weeks of being pretty consistent in order to have that be a habit. So you just have to start small, and you have to practice, and you have to be gentle with yourself and patient with yourself. That's the most important thing. We're very good at beating ourselves up. We're very good at being hard on ourselves. Yes, Juan Gill, there is so much self-growth and development to gain right now. That's true. And not everything is going to work for every person, you know? I mean, I don't know that, I admire the guy who's jump roping and biking. I'll never be that person. I can admire that person. I can respect that person. You know, yoga's about it for me these days. That doesn't mean I'm not doing what's best for me, or it's just that's what I can do. So start small, be patient, be gentle, and be kind to yourself. Because if you're not being gentle and patient and kind to yourself, you really can't be that authentically for others. So that's my little piece of advice.
Naomi,
Yes, Alexi.
yeah, can I jump in with a question that I think has come up a lot in our membership? You know, I think that because our members are dealing with work every day, I think at the beginning there was a need to kind of make sure that they were reaching deadlines and that they were making that transition to working from home effective. And, you know, it's different when you're at work. Even though you might be there for 8-9 hours, you're not sitting at your desk working for 9 hours straight. You're getting up, you might go talk to a coworker, you might go grab a coffee. And I think that some of our members have been talking about how they're kind of reaching a breaking point because they feel like they've had to prove themselves, but it's just not realistic to keep up that heightened momentum, I guess. You know, through months and months of you know, work from home situations. So how do you, you know, address that feeling of like, oh, you know, I can't keep this up. I can't keep this sort of level up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, a universal question that I think everyone is asking themselves who's working from home. I asked that of myself. I started asking that of myself about a month and a half ago. It is not a sustainable pace. How we started out in March, it's not a sustainable pace. And the worry that I feel, not just for myself, but I can just, because I can only use my own experience and this experience of my team. It's not a sustainable pace. I worry about burnout. You know, when people start to get burned out, that's when mistakes happen. That's when people get sick. And so I think it really is important to put these little self-care things in place. So if, you know, you are a kind of person that maybe you work pretty steadily in the office for about 2 solid hours, then you would get up and take a little 15-minute break, get coffee, take a little walk around the block or whatever. You can do that now. you can still do that without sacrificing the quality of your work, the intention of your work. We have to incorporate, we're not robots. You know, you guys are not robots. None of us are robots. So we need to stop expecting ourselves to be working at that pace. You know, I'm hopeful that the industry will go back to work in August, but I'm also worried about October, November when flu season hits. I'm worried that we may be, you know, back where we are. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I don't know. So, like I said before, you know, we need to be prepared that this may be the new normal for a while. And there's no way to sustain this pace. So I would suggest that whatever you used to do in order to keep yourself sane, you know, in the crazy business that you're in where you're working like crazy hours, is to replicate that. All right, so you worked at, can't think of the name of the place where they do Bob's Burgers on Lancashire. You worked at that animation studio. And every day at 11:30, that was your lunch break, and you guys would go across the street to the Starbucks or, you know, down the street. Take that break, you know, set it up on your Outlook calendar and, you know, email or call the 3 friends that you work with at that production studio and say, hey, we're having a virtual coffee break at 11:30. And don't even talk shop for that 15 minutes. 11:30 to 11:45 is, don't even talk shop. Talk about, you know, what you are planning to do for the weekend, or the latest, greatest recipe that you tried at home, or, you know, funny things, the funniest thing that each of your kids did in the last 5 days. You know, find something that's not, it can't be all work all the time. It's not sustainable. It's not reality. You just can't be that way. And I know it's hard for you guys. I mean, you know, as I was preparing this presentation, I was thinking a little bit about survivor's guilt and what it must be like for you guys as a guild to be working and, you know, having steady income and not having some of the, you know, financial stressors and the level of distress that your other industry colleagues are having. You know, they haven't worked in 4 or 5 months. You know, pandemic, unemployment assistance is going to end at the end of July. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they have different levels of different stressors. That's not to say that you have no stressors. You know, you have the opposite, which is what I'm experiencing, which is, this is not a pace. I've never worked harder than I have working from home. Never. I mean, you know, my husband used to call me at 4:45 when I was in the office and be like, close down the computer, get in the car. You know, now he comes like literally with the dinner bell. And if I'm still going, you know, at 5:30, 5:45, even though that alarm has gone off at 4:30, he comes, it's like a cowbell. And I know that I have to stop. So I think we feel the pressure because we are working. And some of this is our survivor's guilt, and some of it is, like you said, having to prove yourself and, you know, needing to stay employed so that we feel we have to work at max capacity in order to continue to be worthy of working. But it's not sustainable. So between the self-care, things that I've talked about, the staying connected to your colleagues, these are all little things that we can start to incorporate that will, I think, help to break up the pace that we're feeling we must sustain, and help us have some sort of more holistic balance. And again, being patient and kind to one another, to ourselves and to one another, and saying, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. A 10-hour day, 12-hour day, that's enough. That's enough. I mean, I don't know enough about your work to tell you, like, oh, well, if you've done blah, 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 you know, that you could probably leave that until the next day. I'm reading the comments here.
Do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah, I'm reading the stuff
Jean?
about the stuff from Jean. Yeah, yeah.
So Jean says, I read somewhere that that we're not really working from home. We're working while going collectively through a trauma at the same time. And honestly, I feel it, but I feel like the studio doesn't seem to be understanding of it because we're still beholden to our deadlines. There's also serious worry about if any of us gets COVID now, that there are people who are getting sick for 60 days or more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all of that is real, and all of that is true. You guys work for the studios, it's a business. They're not mental health professionals. So all of that is real. And it is very traumatic. It's very traumatic to be bombarded with the images that we're seeing, with the news that we're hearing, especially with some of the social justice issues that are still, a major part of our collective consciousness. Those images are very traumatic, very traumatic. It doesn't matter, what your ethnic background is. Those images are traumatic, and there is such a thing as vicarious trauma. We as social workers actually have to take courses in understanding how to deal with vicarious trauma. So it's not trauma that's happening to us, but it's trauma that we hear about, that we see. That is real, absolutely real. And so what I try to suggest to people is not to ignore it, not to put it out of your consciousness, because that's also not real, but to find an amount that is tolerable. We can't let ourselves be bombarded with traumatic imagery over and over and over again. It messes with you. It can cause depression. It can cause really, really serious mental health issues. So, and the worry about COVID is again, that is legitimate, real worry. And you're right. I mean, there are some people that, have a very mild case or have very mild symptoms and they're okay within 14 days. And there are some people that have, underlying health issues or just have, a really, really bad immune response to the virus and it can knock you out. God forbid if someone gets sick with COVID, you should be calling us. You should be calling MPTF, and we will help you figure out how to deal with your disability, how to deal with your MPI hours. We will help you figure all that out. That's sort of what I wanted to, kind of at the end of the slides, is what is MPTF doing to support people? And not just COVID. Anytime you have anything that you feel is overwhelming you, you should be calling us. That's what we're here for. That's why we exist. We exist to support people in the industry with whatever stressors are going on for them. That's why MPTF has 20-something social workers with master's degrees, because the agency really believes and is committed to helping people. This is a tough business. It puts a lot of stress on families. It puts a lot of stress on the individual. I've known for the past 18 years where my paycheck was coming from. I work from 8 to 4:30 or 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I have one W-2 at the end of the tax year. Very few people in this business can have that, You guys are constantly on the move, constantly having to secure work for yourselves. There's great reward that comes with working in the business, but there's a lot of, it's not as glamorous as people would like it to believe that it is. And it's not as glamorous as we're shown on Entertainment Tonight, right? So, all right, I want to show you guys the next slide, which kind of talks about some of the things that MPTF is doing, not just for COVID support, but in general, the things that we've always done, always will do, ways that you can reach us. So, ready for the next slide.
For some reason, there was no next slide on that. It ended with that last slide. I think I have the most recent version.
Okay, don't worry about it. Then I will just put the information, if I can get back to you guys, in the chat. So, some of the things that we're doing for people in the industry, COVID specific. Most of you guys are working, but we do have financial assistance relief for people that are not working. So if you have colleagues that are not on this call, that for some reason are not working, colleagues in other locals, colleagues that are non-affiliated, freelance, it doesn't matter to us. Your union status doesn't matter to us. We will accept freelance work. We just want to help everybody in the industry that has been impacted by COVID. So, that being said, this is our main, I want to make sure I'm not doing this privately. Where am I going? Okay. So the main number to call us for any reason, whatever it may be, is this number. 323-634-3888. For anything. COVID relief, dealing with aging parents, concerns about maybe you have a friend that's losing their insurance, concerns that, you know, God forbid you have a new diagnosis, you know, and you need some help navigating a chronic illness. We're here for, and we do a lot of different things. There's a question. Can someone qualify if they haven't had a union job in a while? Yes. Yes. We do accept freelance work. You don't have to be union. I know the local, you know, the IA probably doesn't love hearing that, but it's true. We know that people increasingly are having to toggle between freelance and union work in order to cobble together their income. That doesn't matter to us. So my email address, we're not done talking, but my email address is also there. I gave it to you guys for a reason. You should be very liberal in your use of it. You may pass it along to whoever you would like in the industry. I can tell you that all of Local 705 and 892 have it. And there's a lot of people in that guild. So I rest assured that I'm giving it to you for a reason, because I want you guys to always have me as a resource. So if you're having issues that are unrelated to COVID, but are related to anything we've talked about tonight, any concerns about aging parents, I do a lot of work around veterans benefits. So if you or someone you know is a military veteran and you're not collecting your pension benefits, if your parents are or were veterans and they may be eligible for benefits that they're not collecting, which would provide them financial stability as they get older and have care needs. So there's a whole host of programs that MPTF has. We have volunteer programs, we have we're doing a lot of grocery shopping for people that can't get out right now. We have friendly phone calls to people that are socially isolated. We've got a whole host of things, really across the age spectrum. So I just want people to know that we're here. We're always going to be a resource for you guys. I was telling Jeanette and Alexi before we started that in general, for whatever reason, the Animation Guild is kind of underserved by us. You know, and I've never quite understood why, except for the fact that you guys tend to be kind of a younger guild, and maybe the things that we are known for don't resonate with the membership. So I also want people, if there's something that you would like to know more about, tell Alexi and Jeanette, and we'll either find someone to talk to you about it, or we'll come talk to you about it. You know, we really want to be responsive to your needs. That's why we're here. We're here to support people in the industry, you know, from the time they begin to the time they retire and beyond. So we just want to be a resource. So anything that you think of, if you're like, hey, you know, I've always wondered about, you know, childcare resources in the San Fernando Valley. I can't get into blah, blah, blah daycare, you know, or I'm concerned, you know, or my friend has a child with special needs and I don't know, you know, I know how stressful it is and I want to help them, but I don't know where to start. You know, all of these things are within our scope of practice. Also, if you have parents that don't live in California and you're worried about them, that's okay too. I've gotten people resources in Maine, Hawaii, Ohio. So, you know, our mission is that by helping you guys with parent issues, we're helping you. We're helping you feel more competent in navigating these waters, which can be very confusing. We're helping reduce stress by making sure that we've gotten your parents resources that they need, even if they don't live in California, so that they can remain in their preferred setting for as long as possible. So I even found somebody in AA meeting in Bangkok, Thailand. So it's pretty hard to stop me. It hasn't happened yet. So, just know that we're here, know that we want to help. Give my email address to whoever you want. Check out the website. Call us if you need us. I don't know what happened. I will try to get it to Alexi and Jeanette. Just so you know, there are both Optum, if you have MPI coverage, and you have coverage through Optum or Kaiser, Blue Cross or Kaiser. Both of those health plans have a 24/7 COVID emotional support hotline. And I will get those numbers. You do not have to be currently enrolled, but if you ever feel like you need to talk to somebody, they're staffed 24/7, strictly for COVID-19 emotional support. It's confidential. And it's basically like a crisis hotline. So, if you wake up in the middle of the night, or if you know people that are waking up in the middle of the night and are just really having a hard time, there are people that will listen day or night, Monday through Sunday. So, any other questions, feedback, anything I can answer?
I think it's kind of this stuff like this helps get the word out, that what are the resources that are even available. I think most of our members don't know. I didn't know, I learned a lot tonight.
Now you know. Yes, the slides will be available to you guys afterwards. There's not a lot of content on them, but you're welcome to them. I will definitely get those mental health support hotline numbers to Alexi and Jeanette, so that she can make sure that they're posted somewhere. Oh, somebody found it.
Great, thank you, Kristen.
Yes. Yes.
I'm just wondering, Naomi, if you could put together, or we can work on having kind of, what are some of the issues that people can come to you all as social workers for advice, just so it's sort of clear to people what kind of problems would be a good fit?
Sure. You want me to talk about that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, all of our social workers are master's level social workers, masters in social work. Most of us are also licensed, which means we've passed the, exam to become a licensed clinical social worker. We don't have time, unfortunately, I wish we did, but we don't have time, unfortunately, to have people at a private practice person where we can see people for therapy per se. So most of the time when people call us, and it could be for a host of issues, it can be for depression, anxiety, concerns about substance use, issues with aging, issues with parents, issues with childcare, someone that's ill, and needs help navigating a chronic illness, a new diagnosis, really anything that, is worrying you. We will help you figure it out. We work very closely with the health centers, the EIMG health centers. I'm sure many of you go to Toluca Lake or Santa Clarita. We're very hooked in with those doctors. Our social workers do staff those health centers. But we're really here to just be of support. Everything that you tell us is confidential, unless it's something that would require us, as mandated reporters to report. So things like child abuse, elder abuse, obviously if someone discloses that, we are mandated to report it. But we are here to basically help you guys navigate whatever is causing you distress. And believe me, we've seen most of it, we've heard most of it. It's, We've had some very, very serious things people have called us about, and we've been able to help them. Right now, I can tell you, for example, I'm working with a young couple, where one of them has a very serious cancer diagnosis. Worked with someone that, was very suicidal. We've worked with people who have been depressed and their medication's not working. We've worked with people who have special needs children and are having a hard time getting the insurance to cover things for what their children need. So there's really a gamut of things that we can be of support. And like I said, everything that you tell us is in confidence. So it's not going to get back to, whoever at local 839, oh, Juan called me and, Juan called MPTF and he told us blah, 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 blah. And, it's not going to get back to anybody. So we're a confidential and safe space for you guys to tell us what might be going on and let us help you deal with it. Does that kind of answer the question? It's very just general, but what I'm saying is call us. Even if you don't think you know what you need, call us. We ask a lot of questions. We'll help you figure out what it is that you really, and what you think you need might just be the tip of the iceberg. You might call us for X, and while we're talking to you, we've found A, B, C, D, and E that we can also help you with.
So it's kind of a good starting place if someone feels a little lost in which way to go,
Absolutely.
I guess.
Absolutely. We're very good at asking questions and helping people deduce, what it is that they're really looking for. If you call me and tell me you feel overwhelmed, I'm going to ask you probably 15 different questions so that I can figure out exactly where the overwhelm is starting and how we can kind of break it down and what resources we can put in place to help make things a little better.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's like a nice kind of lifeline, for something you can grab real quick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to be back, I think, in 2 weeks to talk about caregiver stress and aging parents. I like to call this topic, are you losing sleep over a loved one? You might be a caregiver. And I always like to say about this talk, if you're 40 or older, or your parents are 70 or older, it's time to start talking.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't had these talks yet, you will. And let me help you start to put some language around some of the things you're gonna probably need to talk to your parents about.
Yeah, I'm sure all kinds of new things come up with,
yes.
dealing with parents during the COVID time and all of that.
Yes, this COVID time has eliminated a lot of issues like never before for people about their parents.
Do you have any advice on dealing with the demanding puppy that kind of constantly wants to be held?
I'm the worst disciplinarian ever when it comes to animals. So, no.
Oh my God.
No. I would just keep picking it up and cuddling it and coddling it, and I'm the worst. So. Well, it could be a boy, it could be a girl. I don't know. Is it a boy down
My
there?
love. He's a boy.
Okay. So,
anyway, thank you so
you have
much.
my email. You have the intake line. If you have any questions, anything that you want to discuss with me privately, just email me, and I'm happy to talk to you. So thank you very much for
Naomi.
staying with me. Get some rest. And I hope to see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and contributing to the discussion.
This is a great group. So I hope to see you again in a couple of weeks.
All
Thank
right.
you all very much.
Good
Bye-bye.
night, everyone. He's playing us out.